Okay, welcome everyone. I'm Vicente Bedayes. I teach over at Barry University in Miami, Florida, and I'm one of the organizers of Community Health and Justice. Thank you so much for being here with us. This is the third in an ongoing series of talks that we've been organizing, and this is part of the core mission of Community Health and Justice, which is to just bring people together. And we're focusing in the general area of people who are doing research or are in some way or other involved in community-based research. There is an emphasis on healthcare and reorganizing and redistributing healthcare in light of social justice concerns, but that's not our only focus. One of the key ones is the philosophy and practice of, excuse me while I let someone else in, the philosophy and practices of the social sciences, and particularly in highly politicized times like we live in today. So we're really happy to be able to sponsor this event, and on behalf of my co-organizers, Dr. John Murphy and Dr. Karen Callahan, who I believe is on here, welcome. And I'm just going to turn things over to Dr. Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity and the time to come to Unapologetic Research. This is on behalf of Community Health and Justice, and we bring you this moment in time to honor Black History Month, as we say Black History 365. So if you can do us a favor and turn off your videos or turn off your sound so that the panelists can have their space to speak. Thank you. There's also a chat box, and you can feel free to share questions, and we'll try to get to your questions toward the end of our talk. Keep in mind that this is a very informal chat. We also know that the sciences are very formal, so we wanted to bring you something that was very informal, something that spoke to our culture, something that speaks to our generation as scientists, something that bridges the gaps between science and culture and science and community. So we welcome this idea of just being relaxed, being yourself. If you ever listen to a Breakfast Club interview, it's similar to a Breakfast Club with the sciences. So I introduced to you all my panelists, and they're going to go around and speak for themselves, tell you their names. They're going to also tell you what they do, who they are, and we're going to kickstart the conversation from here. So I'll turn the microphone over to Dr. Rowe.
Peace and love, family. Thank you for that introduction and the setting of the tone, Dr. Poetry. Really excited to be here in community with everyone. I go by the name of Dr. Rowe, also Dr. Rowe Wellness. I am working as a health equity researcher. I use community-based research through mixed methods, particularly qualitative research like photo voice, as well as advanced statistical analysis to really start to assess how we really promote access to care. So I also am an artist. I really enjoy dancing, singing. I have a guitar here on the side, so maybe if there's some time, I'll play a few chords. But again, just really excited to be in community with you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Rowe. And next we have Taylor Fryer.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from around the world. I know a lot of people are in America, but I know that there are a lot of people on the continent logging in today from Europe as well. Thank you for being with us. My name is Taylor Ava Fryer, ABD, and I'm originally from Oakland, California. That's where I am right now. But I work as a communication specialist and upcoming curator. I've started at a HBCU, but moved abroad out of the States about 10 years ago, and I've been on the road ever since. I'm based in South Africa now for the last 4 years, which is where I'm finishing my dissertation. I'm sure we'll be talking about that later. I also straddle a full-time job, so shout out to all of the up-and-coming scholars who also work, because that is our story and that's the journey. I work at the United Nations as a communications advisor and have been in the social sciences working with them for over a year now. Before that, I was with the World Bank. My intentions now is to focus on art integration and development interventions and hope to be in that space as I finish my PhD this year. Thanks again for having me. I look forward to discussing and being a part of this panel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Taylor. Also my Spelman sister. So shout out. We're going to pass it over to my brother friend over here, Dr. Grant. Dr. Grant, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. What's going on? Greetings, everybody. My name is Jonathan Grant. Originally from Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I was born and raised, Duval County. I transitioned to Oakwood University, where I got my bachelor's degree in theology with a double minor in Black World Studies and Biblical Languages. From there, I went to Clark Atlanta University, where I got my master's degree in African American Studies. So there's a bit of a AUC connection here with the two Spelman sisters there across the way. And then after that, I taught history and math on the K through 12 level for a few years before I went and got my PhD from Georgia State University in the Department of Sociology, focusing on race and urban studies. My research looks at Atlanta as a Black Mecca. I study race and class in the urban sector. Currently, I'm a professor at Morehouse College as well as at Georgia College and State University. I have a forthcoming book with Temple University, working title, Ghetto Heaven, Examining Race and Class in America's Black Mecca. I've taught in sociology, social sciences, for a number of years now. I consider myself a scholar activist as well, and continue to stay very active in my community, particularly on the east side of Atlanta. Currently, we are developing a community resource center off of Candler Road, an area that is being quickly gentrified. And so we're doing everything that we can to help maintain the quality of life for the poor and working class and lower middle class Black folks in those areas. In addition to that, I also dabble in the arts. So I dabble in spoken word and music and that sort of thing. So thank you again to Dr. Poetry and your team for having me here.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Grant. We're so proud of you. Yes. Also, and I'm going to turn the mic over to my brother friend over here, all the way live, Dr. Pierce Gordon, who's currently in Botswana right now.
What's happening?
What's happening?
How we doing?
It's going
How things going?
It's awesome.
I apologize, Dr. Shamika Poetry Thomas. I must correct you because my name is actually Dr. Pierce Edward Cornelius Oklohile Gordon.
Okay, now.
For anyone that wants to know, I'm very proud of the fact that I got married 13 days ago.
Woo!
So
congratulations.
We both taking both names is what we're doing. So it's a pleasure to be here. I'm deeply appreciative of the fact that I had the time to be able to connect with the wonderful people and talk about my own personal research and academic and otherwise professional experience, my own, one could say, pedigrees. My work has been at, so Poetry, met her when we were both at Morehouse and Spelman. I was also dual degree, so I went to University of Michigan after that, and I got my PhD and my master's from University of California, Berkeley. My current fields are the intersection of innovation practice, evaluation capacity building, and international development and equity. So my personal research, at least the research of the country that I'm involved in right now, was the an ethnographic evaluation study of the Botswana innovation ecosystem that then evolved and adapted into a litany of applied experiences with innovation stakeholders, entrepreneurial associates, and change makers that are working to shift the economy away from its traditionalized roots of diamonds and tourism in the country. Additionally, I just recently took the position of the director of the Equity Innovation Studio of a Black-led social consultancy called Think Rubik's. So the work that I will be doing at the intersection of transformation and liberation will be towards building out this studio for communities that are interested in the guidance of, one might say, co-design, design thinking, participatory and developmental evaluation, and or any other liberatory strategies that are trying to inject equity into the systems and culture of their organizations. I'm very glad to be here.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Pierce. Listen, I'm so proud of you. And I love, say it again.
One final thing, my apologies.
Oh, go ahead.
I understand my name is hard to say. You can call me Dr. O. You can call me Dr. OG.
Dr. O, I love it. Dr. OG, yes. Okay, awesome. So thank you all for being on this panel. By the way, these are peers of mine who I went to school with, intersected with across different pipelines. And so they are all considered to me my home team. So I appreciate their corrections, and they keep me great. They keep me humble, and I love them so much. So we're gonna get started with the panel. Before we get started, I do wanna set the tone. And we do know, because this is in honor of Black History 365, in our culture, we do like to speak the names of those before us, those currently with us, and those coming up after us. So if you can mute your audio and turn off your camera so that the panelists can be the only visible faces, please. Okay, panelists. So we're going to go around and say their names. And the first round, we're going to name an ancestor that you would like to speak the name of and evoke their presence into this space to ground us. So the name that I'll bring forefront is the name of Ida B. Wells.
Sure.
Tasha.
El Haj Malik El Shabazz. Sure.
I speak the name of Josephine Baker. Ashe.
Speak the name of Dr. Maya Angelou.
Ashe.
Ashe. You're on mute, Pierce.
Thank you. I speak the name of Alma Bright.
Yes.
Ashe.
The next name we're going to speak is the name of an elder who is currently with us that you would like to evoke their presence. The elder's name that I speak is Miss Mildred Sawyer.
Ashe.
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 Dr. Ifeoma Kwesi. Ashe.
I speak to power Dr. Esther Malango. Ashe.
Speak the name of Mrs. Nancy Dawkins.
Ashe.
Okay.
I speak the name of Patricia Gordon.
Yes. Ashe.
Ashe.
The next set of names we're going to evoke is a name of a family member we would like to bring to this moment and to send love to. The person's name I would like to evoke is my father, Milton Thomas Jr. Ashe.
Ashe.
Jael Ashe Grant. Ashe.
Ashe. I'd like to send love to my sister, Morgan Fryer. Ashe.
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 I speak to power the name of my father, Jean-Robert Moïse.
Ashe.
Ashe.
I speak the name of my older sister, Drew Justine Bright Gordon.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And the next set of names we're going to evoke is the name of a mentor who we show gratitude to. I speak the name Dr. Cynthia Neal Spence. Ashe.
Ashe.
Name Dr. Darrell Holloman. Ashe.
My father, Lorenzo Fryer, a great mentor. Ashe.
Ashe.
The name of Dr. Laverne Morrow Carter.
Ashe.
The mentor and culturally responsive evaluator, Dr. Hazel Simonette.
Ashe.
And the very last round of names we're going to evoke to give gratitude to is a child or a mentee that we know of behind us in the pipeline, or someone who we've known of, who is of age or coming of age, that we'd like to send love and strength to in the pipeline process. So I evoke the name of Zaya River Atkinset.
Okay.
I evoke the name Farron Mobley Jr. Ashe.
Ashe.
I speak the name of a new baby, Camila de la Rocha. Ashe.
Ashe.
I speak the name of my goddaughter who just turned 18 yesterday, Rose. Yeah.
Yes, Ashe.
I speak the name of my Motswana brother, Kiama Matale.
Ashe. So we're just going to let the name settle in. Part of our culture is to give honor and reverence to the names before us, the names with us, and the names after us. We send them light, we send them love, we send them the ability to be free, the ability to be unapologetic in their being. And so for that, I also like some sage.
Yes.
Because sage is also very important in our culture, in indigenous cultures and cultures of that diaspora, to send healing energy, restorative energy to the pipeline and to research and to the names before us, the names with us, and the names after us. And may this same strength be sent to everyone on this Zoom call right now. Whatever you're going through in the research process, we send you strength, we send you restoration, we send you healing, and we send you community. Ashe.
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 This is what being unapologetic is all about, everyone. It's about not being sorry for who you are. When you come to the institution of academia, when you come to the crossroads of research, it is about being who you are, being yourself. So thank you for joining us on this panel. And so as we open up with the very first question, we want to know a little bit more about who we are, who you are, not what you do, but who are you, right? So I remember one of my favorite movies growing up was Brown Sugar. I don't know if you know about Brown Sugar, but back in the 90s or early millennium, Brown Sugar, Love Jones, they were like classic Black movies that kind of set the tone. You know, there was like Boys in the Hood, things like that too. But Brown Sugar in the movie, she asked a question. So Sanaa Lathan asked the question to Taye Diggs. And she said, when did you fall in love with hip hop? So I asked my panelists this question right now. When did you fall in love with science? When did you fall in love with research? And so I'll pass the microphone over to anyone who decides to speak first.
I'll go first. You know, I never fell in love with research.
Keep it real.
I fell in love with a question. And to me, that is so much more grounding than research, because it was a question that kept me up at night. It was a question that I felt needed answering. And it was a question that hadn't been answered. Mm-hmm. And I think when we talk about research, it's about adding to a body of knowledge. And for any PhDs, you know, the goal is to add, to offer something unique, ideally. And I would say that research found me through a question. So just a little bit more background on me. I have a bachelor's and a master's in the social sciences and international studies and development. I got my bachelor's from Spelman College. I moved abroad to London and got my master's at University College London. And I thought I was done. You know, after a master's degree, not only was it a lot of work, but it took me 3 years to pay for it. So in pounds, by the way, which hurts in a different kind of way. Once I had it, I felt that I had all that I needed to move forward and get in the door of the careers that I wanted. So really, I had finished, but years later, I had continued traveling and moved to South Africa. And I was just doing the things that I loved. I was on the art scene a lot. And I noticed, because Johannesburg, by the way, everyone, is one of the art capitals of the world. And it has such interesting use of African art and how we understand art. It blew my mind. But my topic actually emerged. I'm sure we'll talk about dissertation topics later, but my topic emerged from a question because of something I kept seeing. And I felt like, why hasn't this been talked about yet? Representation, especially when it comes to the academic spaces, is so key. And I felt like if I wasn't going to do it, who would? So not so much the research itself, but feeling like I was doing something that was going to help and build my story and the stories of other Black women was enough for me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ashe. Anyone else? When did you fall in love with research or science, or with your research question? When did the love show up? Go ahead.
I can go. The good question. I fell in love with work that had a soul instead of more the research. I think that comes to mind. So I've been on the PhD path for longer than I can personally remember. Probably, not even probably, it's incentivized by my mother being like, go, do it, you're doing it, it's happening. I'm like, all right, cool, we're doing it, whatever it means. And I was very, very, very privileged to be a part of a program at Morehouse that no longer exists, but to be an inaugural scholar that started you on the path of the PhD your freshman year. So got you through the hoops and the holes to make sure that you knew what happened, which meant that we very early on recognized things that people truly don't teach you at the beginning parts of an academic journey, that you're there to answer questions that haven't been answered before, that here's where you need to learn about the research process at these summer programs and the like. But being a program that also allowed me to study in 2 disciplines, applied physics and aerospace engineering, I realized, I don't want to do either one of these. I needed my work to have a soul. I just didn't know what that was at the time. And when I found the fields that really resonated with me, the core of it being international development, understanding global poverty at its whole, my research experience, our research program, is specifically designed to be generationally eclectic. It is an interdisciplinary program. You combine 3 disciplines, you work at the intersection of them, which meant you start the program and you are expected to change somewhere, somehow, in any way, shape, or form. So you become, in many ways, an academic entrepreneur. You chart your own path. You which means you have to get used to and being okay with being really bad at asking some questions and figuring out why those aren't the things you need to focus on, and then evolving and adapting towards questions that might be contributed to many different disciplines that actually more align with your purpose, your soul, what you're trying to accomplish in the world. And that, I think, when you mess up a lot and you recognize, as privileged as we are, to be in a space to, though with its misgivings, with its concerns, to be so privileged to create and garner information, hopefully for the betterment of our collective existence, that you start to fall in love with one of the core things of what it means to be human, which is to learn, to build, to collect knowledge, and to grow. And research is one way to be able to engage in that practice, but it is the more you do it, the more I do it, the more I personally think that it should be practiced in every other facet of human existence.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Okay. So we have someone who fell in love with the question, who fell in love with the soul of the research process. Anybody else would like to contribute to this question? And we can always, ask another question and tie it into to the answer. So when did you fall in love with research or science?
Ashe, thank you for posing that question, Dr. Poetry. It brings me back in a really deep way to my childhood. So I grew up in a multi-generational, multilingual household. My parents moved to the United States from Haiti in the 80s. And I grew up in the 90s, again, in a multilingual, multi-generational household. And my exposure to chronic disease was very normal to me. And it wasn't until later that I started to see that some things that I experienced as a child did not have to be normalized. So I'm thinking about seeing my grandmother inject insulin into her abdomen and keep a gallon, like an old milk gallon, and put the needles in there and put that under the sink. Like, I have vivid memories of that. So even seeing what a stroke looks like firsthand as a child, thinking that she was, making faces at me. And it wasn't until my mom was like, all right, Rhoda, like, this isn't, she's not playing right now. So things like that in my childhood that made me question, like, why is this happening in my family? And then seeing why is that affecting communities of color disproportionately? And these chronic diseases are preventable. So I really wanted to go deeper into that. And so I went into undergrad at Penn State University with a degree in biobehavioral health to look at, as Dr. Pierce was talking about, Dr. OG was referencing that integration of different fields. So the biology of health, the behavioral element of health, the environment and how that influences health and health behavior. And so I had the privilege to get some experience in international research with looking at diabetes in the context of Senegal, West Africa, and the power of community. Think about it, with being physically active. Sometimes it's a lot easier to have a buddy to work out with. And that's what this beachside community in Bourges, people were sharing, elders, like, it's really helpful to have a workout partner to walk on the beach with in the morning before the sun comes out and is really intense. So these practical ways to get back to our roots and use things that we've done communally since, ethers of the past. And so then I continued with learning the power of community and looked into a PhD program at the University of Miami, where I met you, Dr. Poetry. So give praise for that. And my degree was in prevention science and community health. And with that research, I took it back to my roots and was able to do work in Haiti. So I looked at, specifically in Miami, how the profile of a woman who reports that she's never been screened for cervical cancer, a basic preventative measure, and use statistics to analyze that. I looked at the geography of access and where these clusters of women who are at risk for cervical cancer lived. And then took the third part with qualitative research, photo voice specifically, to use digital media as a tool for women to narrate their own stories of how they have barriers to and what are the facilitators of services. And so I'm happy to share that paper just got published today, this morning. So if you want to hear more about that, feel free to check that out. Gratitude, everyone. And so it was just so incredibly important for me to, even before the paper came out, to get back to the community and celebrate with music, food, dance, and just certificates of appreciation and completion for participating in the study. So I'm sharing just even what community-based research looks like, because these kinds of things aren't what gets you published, right? But they are no less important. In fact, they are incredibly important to facilitate a continued research connection, a personal connection, a communal connection. So I'm continuing to work at really developing innovative approaches to patient-centered care through education and empowerment. So I fell in love with research, with science, connecting again to Dr. OG with the soul of seeing how that affected my family and with the charge to change that.
Yes, Ashe, I love it. Amazing. So yes, Dr. Grant.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was the only one that didn't answer the question. So
Yes, can you answer the question for us, please?
sure, no problem. So I actually, it's interesting that you brought up brown sugar and how you kind of pulled that question from that statement or that question by Sanaa Lathan. Because when I fell in love, I think with research it kind of coalesces with when I fell in love with hip hop, kind of around the same time. So I was I was and still am in a lot of ways a music head, and the music. So this is like maybe the early 2000s, maybe 2001, 2002. So this is the Soulquarian era. So this is Commons Like Water for Chocolate. This is the Roots, Things Fall Apart era. This is Music Soul Child, I Just Want to Sing. And I would just listen to these albums over and over. And I would freestyle with my friends after school and, do MC battles with friends throughout school. And what I would do, this is also around the time of the internet boom. So I would take these rhymes and these verses from these MCs, and I would print them out at home. And then I would hang them all over my wall, and I would just memorize these verses over and over again. And so after memorizing these verses, I would hear things like I would hear Common talk about "Behold the Pale Horse," or I would hear Black Thought talk about "Things Fall Apart" and Chinua Achebe. And as I'm not knowing what it means, I'm just saying it. And then after saying these rhymes over and over, I would then want to know, well, what is "Behold the Pale Horse"? Where did "Things Fall Apart" come from? And so I would then go and I would research a lot of the things that I would hear these MCs talk about. And that actually started to open up my love for history, my love for words, my love for the English language, my love for, for culture. Around that same time, I had started college. I didn't do well in high school because, like I said, I spent a lot of time freestyling and playing sports and was into music. So I ended up going to a community college shortly after high school to get my grades up, to get my SAT scores up. And around that time, I met this good sister. Her name was Professor Martin. And she introduced me to Du Bois's The Negro. She introduced me to Stolen Legacies by George M. James. She introduced me to Blacks in Science by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and just opened my mind to just so many Black American and African scholars and thinkers, and encouraged me to go to a bookstore that was in my neighborhood in Jacksonville, Florida, kind of like a more poor working class neighborhood, and told me it was this African-centered bookstore in that area that I had never known, and I had lived there all my life. And I went there and I just threw myself into those books, into that knowledge. And it's actually from there that my love for history and my love for religion kind of grew from that. And then out of there, as I started to delve more into history and religion, that's when I found sociology and started to delve more into the social sciences. And, you know, that kind of got me where I am today. So it's all kind of weird in that way, but just wanted to add that piece in there. Thank you for that question.
Yes, no, thank you all for your answers and for the love story you share with science, with research, with the question, the soul of what you do. And so I do want to know a little bit about who you were before 18. So one of the postbacks in our lab, he asked this question during an icebreaker in our lab. What was your most proudest accomplishment? What are you most proud of before you turned 18? And the reason why I asked this question, shout out to Baba G Day or Shayla, he really that the question really speaks to the vibrance of this moment, because so much so being an early career scholar, we're often, you know, seeing the senior scholars being very successful, and then there's a lot of, you know, light being shown on undergrads or postbacks, or so we're like really in the middle as like postdocs or assistant professors or early tenure track, or really trying to figure out the early career part. But I really want to dismantle or demystify that those boundaries, and for us to go back and think about what were we proud about when we were 18, like in science or in elsewhere, and how did that help you to be where you are now?
I got some.
Okay.
I got some things. And I'm going to add the preface that what I was proud of then is not what I'm proud of now. Yeah, well, I'm still proud of it, but I'm not as proud. Let us re-clarify that. At the time, no. I continue to be good at the practice of climbing the school ladder. I'm good at school. I like saying it like that instead of saying I have a particular type of intelligence that is valued over others. The process of raising your hand at the right time, of learning which fields I understand, how to study, who to connect with, all of those strategies that people that are very good at the practice and say, this is what you need to accomplish, and you get these good grades, and then you can go to the right school, and then you can get your PhD and blah, blah, all of that stuff. So at the time, I was good enough to have been accepted full scholarship to Morehouse, but then to all the other schools that I had applied to at the time. And I'm appreciative of that. Obviously, that's not just something I was glad that happened, but turned into a strategy that gave me the opportunity to leverage the decision making on what I wanted to do with my life when it came to research, when it came to academics and the like. At the same time, the reason why I'm not as proud of it anymore, or it's not something that stays front of mind, center of mind, is recognizing my intellectual privilege as to how my brain works, as to what I fell into being able to do. That I think there's a parable that I'm going to bastardize, but the idea that if you have a monkey and a fish right next to each other, and you leverage their value on how well they can climb a tree, then your metrics are wrong. There's in the unschool movement, a community I do not know a lot about, but I'm continuing to learn a bit more about. There's a lead researcher that I can't remember the name of that has the quote that genius is as common as dirt. The reality of the work that I came across of many different geniuses in many environments that aren't as valued in the current educational system as getting summa cum laude in so many different spaces made me rethink of the things that I'm proud of when I was 18. The fact that I was kind to people that I was around, the fact that I loved deeply being in bands, drumline environments, and the like. And that I spent a whole bunch of time learning from people outside of school about which values really matter to me, and learn those lessons that I continue to build on today.
Okay. Really, really interesting perspective, grounding perspective. So anyone want to add to that question that Dr. OG provided for us?
I'd like to add to it. I think Dr. OG really struck a chord with me. And what came up when you asked that question, Dr. Poetry, is I think back to my 18-year-old self. My birthday's like late in the year, so I was just starting college. And there's elements of me that I was proud of like being able to learn how to lead. So in high school, I was a 2-year class president. I was the captain of the soccer team, like things of that nature. And to really be proficient at those things, you have to learn how to follow. And I learned that early. So to still have those lessons of humility and saying, giving an apology when it's needed, and understanding that you're not going to be perfect, you will make mistakes, and to give yourself grace. Those are lessons that will stick with me for life, and I will continue to expand, right? But I also think back to just how I kept it moving, which in that I'm now sort of through the academic pipeline, I'm having the time to like step back and be like, whoa, okay, this happened. I went straight from high school into a bachelor's program for undergrad, straight from that into a PhD program, straight from that into a postdoc. And it's like, all right, wait, let's rewind. You know, what is life like outside of these academic walls? And what types of things did you overlook in your growth, in the way you connect to yourself, and then in turn, the way you connect to people that you may have stepped over because you were keeping it moving and going and going and doing this and finishing this and grabbing this and whoa. So that is something that I've been really meditating on and processing, especially during these times where for me, it's been really introspective and a time to, whether it's redefine or reassess, like, why am I here in this life? And what do I want to do with this life? So I think back to my 18-year-old self. I'm back in Pennsylvania and Philly where I grew up. So just it's a very full circle experience doing the whole research space and occupying that arena, but then also doing that inner child healing work that is so important and needed for me to be able to show up as my best self.
Yes. Shay, thank you for that grounding answer as well. Anyone else want to contribute to?
I really appreciate Dr. Rose's introspective nature and, you know, returning back to where you are and looking at that sense of purpose. That is so important. And I feel like I'm quite in the same boat. I'm here in Oakland. This is where I grew up. And I have to tell you, the idea of two things, actually. One, can I just say that to have a collective of incredibly educated and bright Black people who aren't shying away from saying what they're proud of is a very significant thing that should not be overlooked. That's number one. And number two, yeah, I actually had to take pause to think who was I before I was 18? And I think what I'm proud about lies more in the simple things that are less tangible. So my answer is just getting through high school was an accomplishment for me. I was, there I felt often like a fish out of water in high school before I turned 18. I went to a private Catholic school. I'm not Catholic. It was primarily white. I think it was probably 5% people of color. And I managed to be really excellent as a student. I was captain of the mock trial team, and I was like president, but I was also really eclectic early. I was really interested in like Broadway musicals, and I already had decided that I was moving abroad. And, I had already gotten like really interested in Eastern philosophy and religion. And I found that all around me, no one was interested in those things yet, which is perfect, but I was. And instead of like leaning into what you might be interested in at that age, is maybe like movies and whatever, I had this sense of like being fine with having my own interests and not being afraid to pursue them independently. And while that's not a tangible, accomplishment, really being okay with being by myself and doing me, I think is a huge accomplishment at that age.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's such a tough age.
Yeah.
I often feel like, and maybe some of you feel me on this, it is when we reflect on who we were before we kind of hit society and maybe got broken down a little or had a bad boss or like whatever, you can admire who you were and how you were at a young age. It's the youth that teach us those lessons. And that is what we had. And sometimes it's important to revisit those things, to remember who you were then and how fearless you were and how incredible it was to be a leader that young, and how you can get some of that back too. So I absolutely mirror Dr. Rowe and being really happy to be in my hometown right now. Living abroad, I only get to come here once a year, and the pandemic in this way was a blessing for me, because not only do I get to be with family, but I also get to make that journey within and ask those tough but important questions.
Yes. Amazing. Yes. Very grounding. Thank you. Thank you. So yes, Dr. Grant, do you have something to share before we segue to the next theme?
Oh, no, I'm really appreciating everybody else's response. I know you got a couple more questions you want to.
Yes. So the next, if you don't, okay. Well, maybe you can pick up on this question for us, Dr. Grant. So the question is about being unapologetic. And so now we have the intro out the way and people know a little bit more about who we are. I want to know, what does being unapologetic mean to you in research, connecting it back to the pipeline, connecting it back to your methodology, connecting it back to your science, what you do as a scholar, as an academic? What does being unapologetic mean for you in this sense?
Wow, unapologetic, man. It means being authentic. It means, number one, having an understanding of self. That in and of itself is a journey that we all, I would imagine have kind of used. It seems like from the responses from, the panelists, and Dr. Rowe, and soon to be Dr. Fry and Dr. OG, a lot of what we're doing is all about, understanding self. And the more we understand self, and then the more we understand how this relates to this larger academy, how it relates to the tradition of academia and research within this system, right, within this empire, but then also understanding ourselves culturally and how we connect back to the motherland and how we connect back to who we are and our original selves. And then how do we kind of merge these two, right? How do we navigate, where we are that seems to be sometimes counterproductive or counterintuitive to what it is that we're trying to accomplish or who it is that we're trying to be. And so I think in having that unapologetic research, it's a form of resistance. I feel like it is a form of rebellion. It is the way in which we use our privilege to then break those ceilings and break those barriers for other people to be able to have access to this privilege, to have access to these spaces, and to be able to tell their stories, and their stories are our stories, you know what I'm saying? And so
Yes.
I feel like, and sometimes it could take time, because we're sometimes switching and vacillating from various kind of worlds, and in one part of the day, we can have our foot in one world, and in another part of the day, we can have our foot in another world. And that speaks to, the inextricable link between race and class, not even going into ethnicity and not even going to regional identity, et cetera. And so in thinking about that, I feel like when we get to a point where our research becomes more and more unapologetic, it provides the freedom for those people who we call those young people who are coming up behind us, and maybe even some of our colleagues, to feel brave enough to say, well, let me integrate this new methodological approach into my research, or let me challenge authority and challenge tradition by having this research panel and playing Beyonce in the beginning of it, you know what I mean? Like just
Light and sage.
light and sage, and you know what I'm saying, and really,
Amazing.
and giving love to our ancestors, and and starting out with calling upon them to continue to lead us and to guide us. I think all of that is unapologetic research. I think all of that is resistance. I think all of that is identity work and identity construction that we're all participating in and that we continue to participate in. I think it's in the tradition of Malcolm, and it's in the tradition of Martin, and the tradition of Angela Davis, and the tradition of of Marcus Garvey and Amy Jacques Garvey, and so many and so many others. This constant understanding of self. We just happen to be doing it through through research and through through our science and that sort of thing. So that's my comment on it.
Yes, amazing, amazing. Thank you for that grounded answer. And I was thinking about in the sense of unapologetic research. Someone said in the chat, it's about healing too. It's about restoration. It's about boundaries. It's about centering the people that give us water. I think about my grandmother, God rest her soul. She only had a 6th to 7th grade education, but to me, she had 3 PhDs. She knew so much. She plowed cotton fields in the South. She was unapologetic in her being. She had a huge, like a statue, a statue presence of a being of a woman. Like she was a goddess. And she didn't take no for an answer. And this is a Black woman in the South who spoke, who was an orator, who was a healer, a medicine woman, who helped catch babies, who worked with midwives in a local community. And she always taught me to not apologize for who you are. As a child, she always taught me that. And so coming into my PhD program, studying Black women's health, I was very intentional about studying the variety within group. Not comparing my study respondents to other racial populations, but mainly focusing on Black women and who we are within group. There's enough variety within house. And so for me, that was very unapologetic in this approach, because I did get questions like, well, what about the comparisons between white women and Black women, or Asian women and Black women, or so to speak. There are very different ways that I could have went about this, but I decided not to be comparative across races, but to look at how much dehumanization occurs when we fail to see the variety that we offer within our own group as well. So it was very unapologetic in its methodology. And as a matter of fact, one of our publications was top 20 most downloaded article in Sociology Compass. And my dissertation was nominated for one, most outstanding dissertation award at ASA. So it was also being brave, but it came sometimes with a sacrifice. There were days where I would literally stay up in the lab, blood, sweat, and tears, crying, wondering who was going to read my research, who would be interested. You know, no one would know. No one would know that behind the scenes that I experienced a lot of trauma, a lot of pain trying to carry the stories and narratives of these Black women on my shoulder. But I could not go forward just giving up. And so for me, being unapologetic is about honor. Being unapologetic is about honoring the women and the women who I know who may never know what a lab looks like, who may never know what a protocol is, but they can, you know, make me a cup of tea and tell me, baby, everything's going to be all right.
Shay.
You know, so for me, being unapologetic is bringing those voices into this space because I am her and her and her and her too. Yes. Anyone else would like to share about what it means to be unapologetic? And it's 4:00, so the panel ends at 4:30. So we're going to try to move through a few more questions before we close out. But thank you for hanging on to our guests. Thank you so much.
Dr. Poetry, I will keep it very short and sweet, but I just want to say everything that you are doing and everything you have done has been unapologetic from the beginning. And we just needed to give it a name. So thank you for doing that for us. It is very important that we understand, especially as Black women, that the work we're doing, especially when we are working as our own subjects, you are doing it for the community. And as Dr. Rose said, community is everything. You know, that community emphasis is key. The only thing I wanted to say about this is when I think of unapologetic, I kid you not, I always think of Shirley Chisholm, because she is the embodiment of what courage looks like to me, and unbothered while doing it. I feel like doing a PhD, but also just as a professional in these spaces, literally having a Black body in these spaces is a political disruption. And as such, I don't think that I naturally always had that unapologetic spirit, but knowing who's come before me, who has had to do that work, makes me strong. And so someone like Shirley Chisholm, I was watching like a clip of hers more recently since the elections. She said, if they don't have a seat for you at the table, you bring your folding chair. This is the life of an academic. If you're going to be an unapologetic academic, you certainly aren't going to always be welcome with open arms into spaces. People aren't necessarily going to be happy to hear you speaking about what you're speaking about. And that's okay, because you are doing it for the greater good, for the community. And that's what unapologetic means, reaching for your courage and creating spaces for yourself.
Yes, I love that. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful answer. Any of the brothers have anything to say about this unapologetic nature? Dr. OG?
Any other brothers? I wonder who she's talking about.
Two brothers on the panel. And we have some questions coming in as well. Maybe Dr. OG, if you could tie it into discrimination or any experiences you have with any isms, racism, being unapologetic about anti-racism, etc. Our guests love that we are keeping it real. That's what they're saying at this point.
In the appreciation of keeping it real, I'm tied into the first question that people ask, the democratization processes in Africa. The caution that I want to include in this is that the work related to continental African research is not one of my expertises. But what I can speak on is the depth and the extension of immeasurably valuable research done by and for African researchers that is systematically excluded from almost every single disciplinary canon that a litany of people that many people are exposed to in their everyday work. I think that one of the biggest things that I've been trying to figure out, the reason why I've been pausing is I've been trying to figure out the tie between the question of unapologetic research and that particular question, because why not put them together? And I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is personally, yes, recognizing and advocating for the communities that are a part of me, being a Black man, US citizen, raised in the States with a particular collection of intersectional privileges and oppressions that I live in my identities every day. But when it comes to stuff on the continent specifically, it's being a ally, being, apologies, being an accomplice for the communities that I can help amplify their voice in a unapologetic way, specifically because of those privileges. This is what I mean. So I've been an example comes, I've been connected with a lot of homies on the continent trying to make their lives better. A lot of entrepreneurs in Botswana just trying to connect and interact. There's one of my bros who came to my wedding. He actually caught COVID before I don't know how many people know about the bans process, but you need to put your name up for 3 weeks before you actually get married on a particular day. And the day before we were going to put our bands up, he was the person going to be. He said, "Bro, I got COVID. I can't." He got healthy before the actual wedding happened, so he could show up for that thing. And we had a conversation about his entrepreneurship work. And there are a litany of people that do this all the time in the international level spaces, the academic spaces especially. One of the things that happens is students have student projects with some specialist nonprofit or entrepreneur, what have you, to engage in some academic consultation project. And he was like, "So what do you think about this, Pierce?" And I'm like, "Bro, so many of these situations, they're useful and beneficial in certain situations, but you got to keep them on their game, because what tends to happen is the students get out the fact that they worked with a Botswana entrepreneur working in data science and the like, and they can say they projected, and you probably won't get out much in that experience, in that environment. That's the way the system plays. So to be able to make sure you do get something out of it, you gotta be real. You gotta say what you need. You gotta recognize what they're going to get out of them, because this is not like a normal business conversation. I say all that to say, there are extremely valid and real oppressions that people have to speak truth to in academic environments in the States and all different types of places. However, there are also dynamics that many people in the States don't recognize they're perpetuating by doing international research.
Yes.
And that is one example. There are so many others that represent and advocating for folks on the continent that have been historically exploited in ways that a lot of Americans don't recognize is one manifestation of unapologetic research.
Yes.
that I take in a lot of my work.
You just hit it like spot on, you know. Thank you for that. And Dr. Grant, you have something to add to that? I saw people leaning forward. We got some people in the chat group like, yep, that's the, you know, so there are some responses on what you just said and evoked in this moment. Anybody else want to chime in? Or tie it into this question? How about this? How do you build resilience in spaces where you are the only one? Someone just asked that in the chat group. Thank you so much. Stephen, thank you.
Okay, well,
because our guests want to know, sorry to cut you, our guests want to get to this point of resilience and racism and isms and being unapologetic about those. So can we just segue into this?
Absolutely, Dr. Poetry. So I will explain my answer with offering a circumstance. So my focus in the final year of my PhD, I'm pursuing that at the University of Cape Town. And this is the title of my dissertation. Pay attention because this is important. Black sexual politics in the erotic, the intersection of gender politics, sexuality in contemporary visual art in Africa. So there's some buzzwords there. One might be sexuality. Another one certainly is erotic. Another one is sexual politics. And my focus is the Black female body. So when I decided that I wanted to pursue this topic, I thought I was in a good place. I'm pursuing this at an African institution. This is going to be fantastic. Everyone's going to be on my side. And, you know, for the most part, the people that I do share it with there are a lot of women, especially Black women, who are fascinated by this and more so push me forward because they understand that representation is important. And when we're talking about sexuality and eroticism and the Black female body archetype, there's actually quite a lot of writing on that in America specifically. We have the Audre Lordes, we have, you know, plenty of Black women who speak on this, but in the African context, not as many, and certainly not this topic because sex is still taboo. Fun fact about going to school in South Africa is they use the British system of education, meaning that for a PhD, you actually defend your dissertation your first year, not your last year. So for most PhDs, and myself included, this is a very nerve-wracking experience so early in life as a young academic. However, the good news is if it's not a good enough presentation or the topic isn't strong enough, you certainly are not allowed to move forward. So it's nice to know that before you write a book about it. In my defense, there was a half moon of reviewers, a panelist, if you will. There were no Black people except for my advisor. So I spent almost 2 hours defending and presenting on this topic. And I'll never forget it because the first thing that someone said to me was, Taylor, there's a hole in your research because you have failed to include the histories of the white erotic political body. Room just went silent, you know, and, you know, you have to kind of keep your composure and not say something like, I said what I said, I didn't make a mistake, you know? So, you know, I go through, you know, a eloquent argument of, you know, if this is an argument about inclusivity, then in fact, I would need to include the history of the Asian erotic body and the history of the Latinx erotic body, you know, but that's not what I'm trying to do here. And I'm seeing a pattern just in hearing you speak, Dr. Poetry, about how often when we're talking specifically about, I'm gonna say, Black issues, it is often addressed in a way where it's like, people offer you to dilute that research bring in others, other factors, as opposed to let's focus on this.
Right.
And for me, that was an aha moment because I couldn't believe it. I thought that this would be a home run. I couldn't understand why people wouldn't want this exposed and to talk about representation and inclusivity, and perhaps even consider that Western frameworks to analyze this do not work in the African context. But I realized that not everybody is there. And not everybody's going to get there. So how am I going to push through? How am I going to build resilience against that? And it was a great lesson for me as an early academic, because it is kind of like a omen of the uphill battle it takes to really pursue these kinds of topics. And I'm really grateful for that. So I know one of the questions was, how do you build resilience? I think a thematic takeaway from this panel today for me personally is community. Find the people who are going to be on your side. Not everybody will be, and that's okay. But I guarantee you, the more that you share your story and your reason why, which is why I started this, you will find that there are people ready to support you. And those are your people. And caveat, the only other person who was Black in that room was my advisor. And my advisor was not allowed to say anything because she didn't want to be mama bear. So she left me to defend. And afterwards she said, that was excellent. Don't listen to her. This is what we're going to do. I just felt like, this is my person. I have my community, I'm good. So I would just encourage you to reach for your people, find your people. Your people are probably on this call as well. And know that it's going to take a fight, and that's okay, because you have everything you need to succeed.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. And as we go into more about resilience, what advice and strategies do you have about resilience? Dr. Rowe, I saw you chiming in the chat and leaning forward. Do you have anything to speak on this matter of resilience, breaking through pipelines? Any concrete tips?
Yes, yes, yes. Just all the yeses. So thank you, Taylor, for your contribution to the space, and for you, Dr. Poetry, bringing my thoughts as well. So Taylor mentioned like the importance of mentorship, and I want to remind and encourage everyone to remember that mentorship also is a cross, right? So for me, my sister, Dr. Poetry over here, like, I really can't imagine graduate school without her. To be able to have somebody to just chat with and be real, like how we're talking about, you need a space, like a safe space to keep it real. Because otherwise these issues start to sit on your soul and start to decay your spirit, right? And so resilience is knowing how to nourish yourself, and that doesn't have to be alone, right? So resiliency, again, that across connection. And then I also like to offer the power of like your mentees along the way. I get such like grand encouragement from my mentees, whether they're like sharing praise for my accomplishments and vice versa. But like when I sort of look back at who's coming behind me, I'm like, wow, like I'm inspired by you and your gumption and your fearlessness, right? So that they call it 360 mentorship. It's not just who's above you, your mentors that you're working with and they're helping cultivate you. And it's also who you look in left and right, like, all right, locked arms, we're in the trenches, we're going to get through this PhD program or whatever experience that is. Shout out to Dr. O'Shea Johnson in the chat. He's the current president of the McKnight Doctoral Fellows at University of Miami. All right, these spaces where you're able to not only cultivate community, but practice it on a very real and intimate way, right? And these are the people that are also going to help you stay on your toes and keep you in check. Like, okay, well, you know, maybe you can just, they help you expand your views. They affirm you. Just that is how I really look at community and resilience. And I also like to offer resiliency in approaching research and finding a theoretical framework that helps you think through these issues. So for me, I have really enjoyed using the Penn 3 cultural model. Mm-hmm. That is a model that was developed formally in the 90s by Dr. Collins Bua. And he is, hey, we got somebody that uses that model as well. So just for some insight, it's a health behavior and health belief model that looks at the centrality of culture, whereas other health and health behavior models come with more of an individualistic approach to how people exist and how they, again, it's called the Penn 3 cultural model. That's PEN-3 cultural model. Yep, thank you. That's smart.
Yes, thank you.
See, look, I'm loving it. The tag. And so just like briefly, I was introduced to that model in undergrad when I was looking at a topic looking for a theory to help me assess my thesis topic. And I came across that model. Fortunately, like Dr. Bua, who created and developed this model, an African scholar who, continues to do global work, he was at my institution. And so it was like, wow, I'm sitting here with the plug. So I had the opportunity to chat with him about it. And lo and behold, years later, I continue to use the model. And he actually recently reached out for me to contribute a book chapter to something he's creating in honor of that model and the timeliness of it with health equity, right? So that's community, that's resilience. Having the people and the sort of process, the thought process of approaching your research questions from a way that helps you grow and flourish.
Yes. Beautiful, beautiful, Dr. Rowe. Thank you so much bringing that home, Ashe. So the question, as we come into a close, we have about 9 more minutes in the group on the call. So I do want to talk about your next projects coming up. So what's a next project that you're working on, or something that you hope to connect to what you're currently doing, that you would love to just share in this moment as it connects to resilience or it connects to being unapologetic? Me in particular, right now, as a postdoc at NIH, I'm working on non-invasive prenatal testing among Black women with sickle cell disease. And so in my project, again, adopting the same model that I used in my dissertation, which focused on interviewing Black women, the intradynamics between Black women as their own group, as their own referent group, without a standardized reference group. I applied that same approach to my postdoc project, where I'm looking at 40 or hoping to interview 40 Black women virtually about their experiences with genetic conditions and non-invasive prenatal testing. And so we know that Black women are 3 to 4 times more likely to die from prenatal complications, and these outcomes are getting worse as we across the nation. But looking at these reproductive health technologies, these technologies are increasing in the science world, but the disparities are persistent. And so I want to know, in my research, this is my next project, is to investigate what Black women think about these advanced reproductive health technologies and how they perceive these technologies as a means for standardized prenatal care. So that's where I'm headed. Anybody else would like to share where they're headed with their research? I see Dr. Grant over in the corner, Dr. OG kind of leaning to the side. So if you could just share a little bit about your upcoming projects. Rope the brothers into the circle because the sisters are holding it down. So
as always. Yeah, so couple things I got coming up. Number one, my book Ghetto Heaven: Examining Race and Class in America's Black Mecca. I definitely want to publicly shout out Dr. Poetry, who actually really helped to make that research even more unapologetic by encouraging me to, integrate my history and love for spoken word and poetry into the research method. And so that's something I'm currently working on. And so that kind of ties in both of those. So I really appreciate that conversation we had, and you just encouraging me to push past, some of the traditional ways in which we collect data, even if we're trying to kind of break out of these kind of white-centered theories, also breaking out of these kind of traditional white-centered methodologies. And so that's something I'm currently working on, and looking forward to that, really breaking new ground in our field. So currently working on that. I was actually asking, I know Poe, we text off and on, so I'll tell you more about this later on, but I was currently just asked to be the co-editor of the Journal of Urban Affairs Black Mecca issue. So look to be working
on editor.
Yes, ma'am. Look to be working on that soon. What else I got going on? I got a book chapter that's due right after this. So as soon as we get off of this, I'm gonna go ahead and try to get that in, because that's due by 11:59 tonight. I need to
Keeping it real.
Need to go ahead and submit that in there. But a book chapter on the Black middle class. So I'll be submitting that soon as well. Yeah, those just a couple things I got going on.
Amazing. Thank you so much, John, I'll call you John, Dr. Grant. Dr. OG, what you got going on over there, and with
what I got
your next
going on over
project?
here? All right. I'm working on a startup. That's what I'm doing. That thing I told you about before, being the director of this brand new studio, where we're building it from scratch. I've been really blessed to be a part of a community of people that call themselves designers, that critique, that support, that facilitate understanding spaces of equity, of justice, of liberation in doing the strategic design work, whether it's in user experience design, whether it's in service design, policy design, the like, participatory design, all of those fields and those communities. And to have made a very small name of folks to be like, oh, that guy, that OG, I think he knows what he's talking about, and be like, I think there's some process and values, because it's not just about putting out the information and being excited that it's out there. It's making sure that it's valuable to the communities to be useful. But now it's time to put the nose to the grindstone, because it's not. I'm outside of academia. I went into an alt-ac disciplinary work really, really early in my career, and folks are like, all right, so build this studio from scratch, get some business, get some clients, and you say that equity innovation is a thing. Let's see if we can actually transform organizations, communities using these tools you say exist. So that is scary. It is, I am very glad to have a team we're working collectively to create something unique in this space. But the other answer of what my thing is, I'm trying to recreate my relationship with productivity, because I have a wife now. You understand? trying to be married. I'm trying to recognize
Have a life.
how to build a team, have a community, not just to be working 80, 90 hours a week, 3 a.m. sometimes, to be on certain people's schedules. Because those realities are manifestations of neoliberal capitalism and white supremacy that does not reflect a culture of healing, of equity, of support, of community, of Black liberation. So that's what I'm about.
I love it. Amazing. Amazing. So we are approaching 2 minutes to go. And as we segue off, I would love the panel. Thank you all so much for hanging on. We had quite a few people on this call today, so thank you for your time and being with us. Panelists, I would love for you to go around and just say your last closing words. What's a quote you would like to end with? A tip, a strategy, a bar from a hip hop song, R&B song, something of the sort you would like your fan base to know more about you, how to find you, how to follow you, and then we'll segue off from there. So I'll give the mic over to Dr. Fryer.
Big thank you to all of the doctors on the call. I'm just so pleased and proud to hear what you're doing and hear that you're winning, because when you're winning, we're all winning. So I just want to thank you again for taking your time to share with us. And I'm sure I speak for those on the call to say that everyone needs to hear this. You know, it is very important we have these discussions. Big thank you to Dr. Poetry as well for having me today.
Thank you, sis.
Thank you, sis. Last things for me. Let me just say like one thing really quickly. Because I'm very excited and I feel it's important to share these moments. So I've been accepted to be published with Aix-Provence University in Marseille in France. So I'm in the trenches right now trying to like make it happen.
This group is lit, you all. I'm telling you, everybody on this call is like boss. So I just want to say that. Go ahead, Taylor. Sorry.
And particularly excited because it's an international journal, and what we're talking about is decolonizing art in Africa. And we all need this. Like, I feel like this is something that's needed. I've also decided to launch my own curation kind of business. It's called Art Unknown, and it's looking at Black art, the Black avant-garde, and finding unconventional Black art in unconventional spaces. So I've started curating. You can find that at Taylor Ava Fryer or at Art Unknown Official on Instagram. You guys will probably also be seeing me. I'm writing for Business Insider now, so I'm going to be doing art critique. I'm really excited about that. And, you know, trying to get some naps in while I can. My closing quote is from Erykah Badu classic. The line is, "I was born to make mistakes, but my heart can take the weight. So even if I veer off the path, I know my heart will guide me back."
Yes.
Thanks for having me here.
Thank you so much, Taylor. Amazing. By the way, I don't know if you don't mind, but she's also in Vogue. Vogue magazine for her photo and photography in Cape Town, South Africa. So thank you so much, Taylor. She's also one of my besties. So I will hand the mic over to Dr. Rowe for her closing remarks, her closing bars and quotes. How can we find you? How can we follow you?
Peace and love, family. This has been incredible, Dr. Poetry. I'd just like to thank you and your team for organizing this. As Dr. Taylor, we call it as, you know, as it will be, not as it is now, but, you know, that vision. Dr. Taylor, thank you for your contributions and really reminding us to come as our whole selves into different spaces. I didn't know you were a photographer. Like, okay, that's awesome. Yes, you know, the art. So on that note, my quote comes from this song.
Come on, play the music for us. Somebody said Ubuntu. I am because we are. I love it. Oh, fire.
That comes from a Bob Marley song, and that's the redemption song. My quote is, "My hand was made strong by the hand of the Almighty."
I know that's right.
This generation. So keep encouraged and keep moving forward. I'll put my contact in the chat, so stay tuned and stay in touch. Peace and love.
Yes. And Dr. Rowe is a certified yoga instructor in training, by the way. She has her own wellness LLC. So she is Miss All Around. She's so dope. Please follow her. She's one of my dear kindred spirits and besties. So thank you so much, Dr. Rowe Wellness. And we're going to pass the microphone over to Dr. OG to tell us more about how can we find you, what's your bar, what's your quote. How would you like to close out this segment for the people?
Hold on, dang it. I put the thing here, right there. That's my at Okohile Gordon
Okay.
on everything. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, what have you. That's my name
TikTok.
now. I wish. So my quote, it is not Lupita Nyong'o's quote, but she said it and it's stayed with me ever since. It was the deeper your heart is broken, the more joy your heart can contain.
Wow.
Wow. First of all, gang to Dr. Shamika Poetry Thomas, gang to Dr. Fry, putting it out in front, gang to Dr. Kyra Brown. I see you in the chat. What's good, craft sister? What's good? Morehouse Marching Band, we out here and all that. What's good? Anyway, it's been a pleasure to have you here.
Fuck Atlanta.
Love all y'all. Stay safe. That's all I got.
Yes, thank you, OG. I love it. Amazing. Listen, y'all, Dr. Pierce OG, listen, it's like my Morehouse brother, like literally at the heart and soul. We wouldn't have made it through, but we smuggled each other through. Please follow him on everything because he is amazing. You want to know this brother. He's going to be on TED Talk someday. He is going to be running things all over the world. So just keep him close. And last but not least, my brother, my kindred spirit over here, Dr. Grant, as I say, rich homie Grant, rich homie John. Please tell us your favorite quote you would like to leave out on, how we can find you, your best strategies for the people.
Man, this is a quote that's been on my spirit for a while now, and it comes from a gospel song by Donald Lawrence, which he took from a word. I believe this was in I can't remember if it was in Psalms or Job, but it says, I'm restoring the years that you've sown in tears. And so that piece just speaks so much to me. And that anything that you've lost in your PhD journey, anything that you've lost in your personal journey, any struggles that you've gone through, whatever it is that you cling to, the universe, the Most High, yourself, the ancestors,
yes.
Allah, Jehovah, Jesus, Buddha, whatever it is that centers you, you will be restored. Everything that you lost is going to be restored tenfold, just like in the story of Job, and that still exists today. So that's the quote I want to leave you with. I'm putting in where you can find me at J. Paul Grant on IG. Also, my website, www.jpaulgrant.com. Thank you so much to my sister, my friend, Dr. Poetry, for allowing me to be a part of this illustrious panel of just beautiful and wonderful people. I'm so proud of everybody here and all the work that you're doing and all the work that we're doing to continue to advance the cause of liberation for our people. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be in tune with these beautiful guests here. And I just say Ashe to everybody. Thank y'all.
Yes, Ashe. Thank you so much, Brother Grant. Listen, let me tell y'all, Jonathan, literally, we made it through statistics together. And we've been like besties ever since. And honestly, like this brother has a podcast y'all want to follow, Street Academy. So these are scholars who are in the sciences, but are also in social sciences. They're also, as we say, 1 foot in the academy, 1 foot in their own artwork. So we really appreciate the intersections because we got to be our full selves in research. And so for me, you can find me on Instagram at Shamika Poetry Queen. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. Poetry the Scholar, Dr. T_the Scholar. I'm also on LinkedIn, Shamika Poetry Thomas, formerly just known as Dr. Poetry. Yes, I am just loving this beautiful amazingness on this panel right now and sending so much love and light to everybody on this call. My bar to end with is from Nina Simone, because let me tell you, defending my PhD was one of the most challenging milestones of my life. And it wasn't the PhD itself, it was everything happening around it. It was COVID happening, my grandmother passing away, it was me being a single mother, it was all of that all at once. But guess what? This song really kept me. It's from Nina Simone. She says, birds flying high,
you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn. It's a new day. It's a new life for me. And I'm feeling good. So that's the quote that kept me flowing, that kept me flying high, because if Nina Simone could sing it, I could live it. And my grandmother could be free on the other side, and she's watching over me right now. So I thank her for her delicate pipeline energy. So I'm gonna close out with this song for everybody, because we did come from Spelman Morehouse HBCUs. I know she was in Penn, but she's still a part of the HBCU family. And one of the songs that really stood out to us as undergrads and graduate students was Swag Surfing. So I just gotta play this, and you could just log off from here. But this is for my panelists as my gift to you all. Here you go. Y'all ready? Okay.
Man, I got this swag.